Okay, good afternoon, panel members and colleagues, and welcome to this meeting of the Northamptonshire Police, Fire and Crime Panel. For the purpose of the webcast, my name is James Edmunds. I'm Democratic Services Assistant Manager at West Northamptonshire Council, who are the host authority for the panel. And I'm opening the meeting today because the first item of business is to appoint a chair for the meeting, reflecting that this panel meeting has needed to be called ahead of the first regular meeting in the civic year, when normally we would appoint the chair and deputy chair for the year ahead. So before getting to that, I can advise you of apologies for non-attendance for the meeting, which are Councillor John Paul Carr of North Northamptonshire Council, with Councillor Philip Irwin substituting, Councillor Zoe McGee of North Northamptonshire Council, with Councillor Anne Lee substituting, Councillor Ken Pritchard of West Northamptonshire Council, with Councillor Greg Lunn substituting, and also apologies for non-attendance from Councillor Russell Roberts of North Northamptonshire Council and Miss Pauline Woodhouse, who's an independent co-opted member of the panel. So if we could move to the second item on the agenda, which, as I say, is to appoint a chair for the current meeting. So if I could invite nominations for that position from panel members, please.
Thank you, James. I'd like to nominate the chair for this meeting as Councillor John Mercer, if you'll accept. Thank you. Thank you, Winston.
Thank you. So that has been proposed and seconded. And are there any further nominations? I see none. So in which case, Councillor Mercer is appointed to chair the current meeting.
Thank you very much, everyone, and welcome. And welcome to our guests as well. The first item on the agenda is notification of requests from members of the public to speak. Do we have any?
We have received none, Chair.
Off all the time. Declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest? Okay. The next item is Chair's announcements. I don't have any particular announcements for this meeting, although there is another meeting in just a few weeks, and so we'll be meeting again fairly soon. Now, onto the substantive business. I'd like to welcome the candidate, Mark Jones, to the hearing, and if we could just go round everybody saying who we are, just so that Mark is aware of who you are and which area you come from. Okay, thank you. Isn't it off?
Yeah, Councillor Anne Lee for the Windmill Division in Kettering, long-standing interest in fire, well, in crime panels and so on. Thank you.
My name is Anita Shields. I'm an independent member of the Police, Fire and Crime Panel.
I'm Winston Strachan, Councillor on West Northants Council. Thank you.
My name is Philip Irwin. I'm here as a substitute. I'm a councillor in North Northamptonshire for one of the Central Wellingborough Awards.
It's Councillor Greg Lunn, and I'm Dustin East for WNC.
Councillor David Smith, West Northamptonshire, and portfolio holder on the Cabinet as well.
James?
James Edmunds, West Northamptonshire Council, Democratic Services.
Diana Davis, West Northants Democratic Services.
Always include the hard workers. And I'm Andre Gonzalez, West Northamptonshire Councillor for East Hunsbury and Shelfleys, which is just south of the town and a very growing, important area.
Okay, I'm Dorothy Maxwell, and I'm from East Northants Council, North Northants Council, but in East Northants. Thanks.
I'm Councillor Jill Mercer. I'm also from North Northants Council, also ex-East Northants Council.
I'm Councillor Adam Brown. I'm Deputy Leader of West Northamptonshire Council and a member of the Bugbrook Ward, which is a group of 12 villages just west of Northampton.
I think so. Stephen Mould, Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner for Northamptonshire.
Nikki Marzek, Head of Paid Service and Monitoring Officer for the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd like to call on James Edmunds now to briefly outline the format of the hearing, and then we'll, if anyone's got any questions on the procedure, then we'll go on to that afterwards. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Chair. So this is to expand on the report at item 6A in the agenda papers. So the confirmation hearing of the proposed appointment of a Chief Fire Officer is one of the statutory functions of Police, Fire and Crime Panel. So as set out in the report, when the Commissioner proposes to appoint a Chief Fire Officer, that appointment must be subject to review by the panel, resulting in a report and recommendation to the Commissioner on the proposed appointment. The panel is required to hold a public meeting, the confirmation hearing, at which it is required to ask questions of the proposed candidate. Those questions should focus on the areas of professional competence and personal independence, as set out in para 5.4 of the report. So, and it's important to emphasise that the confirmation hearing is not intended to be a repetition or a duplication of the recruitment and selection process that the Commissioner has carried out to get to the point of having a proposed appointment. It's intended to be almost a final stage, a check and balance, a safeguard in the overall process before the confirmation of the appointment. So, as I say, confirmation hearing is called for the purpose of the panel asking questions of the candidate with a specific focus. At the conclusion of that questioning process, the panel will be asked to move into private session in order to consider its final conclusion, the recommendation it wishes to make to the Commissioner, that will go into a report sent to the Commissioner following this meeting. If I could then highlight paragraph 5.8, which summarises the conclusions that the panel can reach. So, if satisfied with that the candidate meets the required standards for appointment, it can recommend that the appointment be made. If the panel is satisfied that the candidate meets the required standards but has any query or concern or it wishes to add, then it can make a recommendation to this effect. The panel does have the option of recommending that that an appointment not be made, and going beyond that, the panel has the option on a set majority of members that of recommending that a proposed appointment be vetoed. That would require a majority of 2/3 of the total membership of the panel. So in this case, it would be 8 out of 12 members. And again, as set out in the report and set out in guidance produced for police, fire and crime panels, a recommendation not to appoint, and particularly a veto, should only be used in rare or exceptional circumstances, because the veto would effectively be the panel saying it considered that a proposed candidate didn't meet the minimum standards required to be appointable. So, following the hearing, there will be a report and recommendation sent to the Commissioner. That will be published in liaison with the Commissioner's office, and again, depending, we'll set out the outcome of the process. I'm happy to take any further questions, as I say, Chair, on what's set out in the report or what I've said in addition to that.
Do we have any questions on the procedure? Okay, no? So I'd like now to hand over to Stephen Mould as PFCC to outline the proposed appointment and to introduce the candidate to us.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I'd like to begin by welcoming Mark to the panel today, and I have no doubt that panel members will be impressed with his knowledge and experience, which I'm sure will enable us to continue to deliver the ongoing improvements we have been able to make to our fire and rescue service. Today marks an important day in the future of our fire and rescue service. Since I assumed responsibility from governance, we've been able to deliver real improvements in performance, investment in the fleet and equipment, large-scale recruitment of new firefighters and improved response times. We are rightly proud of what we've been able to achieve, and I want to pay tribute to Darren Dovey as our Chief Fire Officer has shown great determination, vision and ambition to ensure the transfer went smoothly. He's provided me with great support and counsel, which has helped us to navigate the various challenges and issues we have faced. The report in front of you today sets out in detail the comprehensive process we undertook to recruit Mark as my preferred candidate as Chief Fire Officer for Northamptonshire. The recruitment process was robust, and it became very clear that Mark would be the right person to take Northamptonshire Fire Rescue forward into the next stages of its development. And that's creating a positive, inclusive culture, embracing change, and taking the undoubted skills of our firefighters and staff to build on the already significant work being undertaken in the broader community safety agenda. The feedback we got throughout the process consistently showed that Mark is a strong leader with a clear approach that would help me to deliver the priorities in the police, fire and crime plan. The panel today has an important responsibility to review my proposed appointment of Mark as the next Chief Fire Officer for Northamptonshire. I'm sure you will undertake this significant duty with great vigour and insight, and we will be happy to answer any questions the panel members may have. Back to you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Well, welcome again, Mark. And we have a series of questions which I've tried to establish so that everyone gets one question. One of the councillors, Greg Lunn, I didn't see you come in, so if you ask the last one on the list, that would be good. So just to get that out of the way. And so I'm going to ask the first question. What particularly attracted you to the role of Chief Fire Officer for Northamptonshire Fire and Rescue Service? And what do you see are the main challenges currently facing Northamptonshire? And what will you take from your previous professional experience to enable you to address these challenges effectively?
Thank you and good afternoon to all of you. I'm a wee bit choked up with hay fever. Coming from an Australian winter to an English summer wasn't that clever, it seems. What attracted me to this role, I'll be quite honest with you all, I wasn't looking to take another chief's job in Britain. And I'd already given notice to my employers in Australia that we were returning home because we wanted to be closer to our children in England. The job came up and was attractive to me because it signified that it wanted change, it wanted further, it's achieved a lot of improvement under the current leadership. It wants more improvement, and that's attractive to me. I'm attracted to challenges. And everything I learned in my research after I applied for the job and subsequently through the process of selection has confirmed to me that you all want, continued and sustained improvement for the service. I'm drawn to that challenges. For those of you who had a chance to see my CV, that's what I've achieved everywhere I've been, and my employers in South Australia will testify. I've also achieved a significant amount of change in my 3 years leading there. So that's what attracted me to it. The challenges for Northamptonshire Fire Service are pretty much the same for all UK fire and rescue services. The stakeholder expectation is disproportionate to the funding inputs. and that's probably true of all public services at this point, and we're heading into tight financial times in government terms and for society. So in these times when hardship hit the public, our demand generally increases for both fire and crime. The risks to society and the most excluded people in society are generally placed at more risk. So we're going to have increasing demand with restricted resources. That's going to be a significant challenge across the UK. Now, Northamptonshire has fortunately gone with the establishment of the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioners arrangement, has had a good funding injection. It was at one time a poverty-stricken county fire service, less so now. So that's a chance for us to build upon something. But I believe that lack of money is the root of all evil in public services. And under my leadership, if I'm successful today, I will seek as many funding streams, and not always traditional ones, to help sustain the service. When we have sufficient funding, the other challenges, of course, through any change agenda are to take our people with us. And I don't just mean our employees. We've got fantastic, all over the world, firefighters are generally very enthusiastic and can be quite willing to change if it's, goes with them as opposed to done to them. But we also have to make sure that the public at large, who are our customer base, understand the reason for change and why we try to improve our services for their benefit.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to call on Councillor Gonzalez de Savage to ask the next question.
Thank you, Chair. Mark, welcome. My question is, what do you see as the main challenges facing Northamptonshire Fire and Rescue Service, and what will you take? I do apologise. That's what I was actually preparing for, but that's fine. Okay, I'll carry on. I'll just erase that last couple of seconds. Okay, I'm just going to drill further down the earlier answer you gave on that basis, which is, as Chief Fire Officer, how will you seek to ensure that Northamptonshire Fire and Rescue Service continues to improve its performance and progresses towards providing outstanding rated services for local residents? Thank you.
Upon appointment, one of my early jobs would be to have a pretty good study of where we truly are against our aims and ambitions at this time. When we talk about, I often see public authorities talk about going from good to outstanding without defining what either looks like. These tend to be feelings as opposed to measurables. I prefer measurables as your officer. So I would prefer that we find out where we stand against our current suite of measures. We find out what investment we're making towards improvement against those standards, and then we seek to establish future measures for the improvements that we need to deliver. There's an old adage that what gets measured gets done. I contest that if we want to change what gets done, we better change what gets measured too. So that gives something tangible for me to report to the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner upon, and for something, realistically, for him to hold me to account against. I often see appraisals with senior people such as this position where it's not established what standards they are to perform to. I much prefer being held to standards which are agreed with my employers. And we can do that once we know what and the other part of that is telling people why. It's all very well wanting to go from good to outstanding, but why? What will that mean in terms of public safety? How will we state the case in terms of, we've heard the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner describe improved attendance times. What did that mean in terms of outcomes for those we serve and protect? I think it's important that we have that dialogue too, particularly at your level, because for electeds, I think it's really important that elected members can understand, can tell that story in those terms.
I'll just add something to that. The bit you won't know, in between now and subject to yourselves today, is we will have our HMIC report. I have already seen that draft, but it's inappropriate to comment on it. But it will demonstrate there's some work to be done. So we'll have those nice measurable pieces too.
Thank you very much. Look forward to that. Now, I'd like to call on Mrs. Shields, who has a question which wasn't on the original list. So if you're confused, this one was just slotted in. Thank you.
Okay, there is my question. There is a possibility of industrial action in the future connected with a national pay offer for firefighter. If that was to occur, how would you seek to manage the impact in Northamptonshire and to maintain continuity of service? Do you have perhaps an example of the past?
It's incumbent upon all fire chiefs to make contingency arrangements for any eventuality which may affect fire cover. And it's my presumption Northamptonshire Fire and Rescue Service has a plan for that, because that's a governmental requirement. I would seek to scrutinise that plan and assess its adequacy. I would also seek to minimise the impacts of industrial action by enhancing public safety measures wherever we can. What we found out where fire services have withdrawn their services in the past was public safety is very, very high. People tend to adopt much safer practices. So community education is really important. I think we also have to recognise a very legitimate right of firefighters to take such action. And I think the protection of the public shouldn't necessarily diminish for short periods of action of that nature. But I would seek to see what plan we've got, assess its adequacy and enhance it if possible.
Sir Owen, next.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Mark. You've already partially answered this question, I think, but I'm sure you can say a little bit more. What do you see as the key factors in enabling Northamptonshire Fire and Rescue Service to operate as effectively as possible in a demanding financial environment, and how will you seek to address these factors?
I think all fire services, as acute demand has diminished over the years, all fire services have what I would describe as some latent capacity. Of course, we have to preserve operational readiness, but we've also got the ability to work with partners and help them achieve their agendas whilst achieving ours at the same time. So one of the things I'd be keen to do is investigate with the new close relationship with the police is how the fire service can work more closely with other public service partners and private service partners, a huge private sector in Northamptonshire, that we could try and engage with and get some advantage from them and sell our value. I think fire and rescue services globally undersell their value. We're only really relevant at the time of crisis when people are suffering. We do far more than that, but we don't publish it very well. So I'd like to be able to tell that story a bit more about the fantastic work that the fire crews of Northamptonshire do day in, day out that isn't emergency response. I think it's really important that we do that. That will create the listening ear from those partners. If we approach a number of the large global companies who are located in Northamptonshire seeking to partner with them at the moment, they'd fail to see the reason why. We're going to have to sell the value of a relationship with our service. And that's what I spoke about earlier, looking for some alternative funding arrangements as well, some input from these people directly.
Sorry, now can I call on Councillor Strachan to ask his question, which probably leads on from what you just said.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry. Apologies. Mark, how will you, as Chief Fire Officer, seek to ensure that Northamptonshire Fire and Rescue Service makes good use of opportunities for partnership working, both with the emergency services and with partner organizations in the broader area of activities?
Thank you, sir. I've touched on partnering a little in my previous response, but there's much more to be done, and I'll say a few more points on that. Firstly, it's very common in public services to have partnership registers, where we have many of them, when I read them, are merely lists of who we partner with. Often we don't say why we partner with them, what we're aiming to get out of it, and what their strategic aims are that we're contributing to. Therefore, what I find with fire and rescue services in particular, the officers are very diligent. You will often see us chairing a number of groups, societies, partner arrangements, leading, putting a huge amount of officer effort, time, and often even finance into, with nothing coming back by way of public safety, which is our mission. So I'll try and get some balance on that and assess which partnerships bring us the most value. I've been openly critical about a long time ago, the decision to force fire and rescue services into regional partnerships with some neighbouring jurisdictions which weren't our natural partners. And Northants has been a victim of that. Northants is a really good partnership with Milton Keynes, for example, through the South Midlands partnership. But the fire service relationship, and I say this from my previous experience as Chief of Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes, was almost non-existent. in terms of partnership opportunities. In Bedfordshire and Milton Keynes on our southern borders are perfect opportunities for us to do better partnering, joint purchasing with. We don't have to be bound by the former regional dogma. So that's one example of public service and emergency service partnering, which other public services have embraced more readily than the fire and rescue services have. So I think that's one of the opportunities I'd like to light up. And with my previous connections in the south, I'm sure we could do so.
Mr. Smith.
Very warm welcome, Mark. I love this question. I'm looking forward to the answers. So could you give an example of when you've led a major service transformation project and how you sought to ensure that it was successful?
Yeah, from January 2016 to January 2018, I served the Australian Capital Territory government as the odd job title of Director of Strategic Reform for the Emergency Services Agency, which oversees all of the emergency services there. That job title actually means target for opposition and journalists, I think. So, but what I quickly did was I worked out that they had hundreds of millions of dollars going into a series of reforms. One of them was diversifying the fire service, one was improving industrial relations in the ambulance service, and one was building properties, new ambulance stations. What hadn't been done was they hadn't been put in any sort of business-like arrangement. So I took each of the 6 projects and developed them under Prince 2, the British government methodology. Then I wrote a Managing Successful Programs program over the top of all 6. I knew I was there on a fixed-term 2-year contract and a 2-year visa, and I knew that these projects would all run way past my tenure. So I had to make sure that they would continue on track after I left. So that enabled me to get them all packaged up so they'd run well, and so that from the political decision to fund them to the outcome was all very visible. It also required me, however, to coach a number of people who had never done project management and get them up to be qualified project managers and understand what they were doing. They had been able to deliver public services with less diligence than is required in the UK. And my colleagues were magnificent, actually. And those projects are still running and delivering to this day, 4 years later.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Maxwell.
Hello, Mark. I think it's lot one after 7. That one. Oh yeah, sorry. The Chief Fire Officer and Police Fire and Crime Commissioner must work as a team in the interests of Northamptonshire, but do so in a way that recognises that the Chief Fire Officer is responsible for all operational leadership of the Fire and Rescue Service and is held to account by the Commissioner for its effectiveness. How will you seek to maintain the right balance between these different factors in working relationship with the Commissioner?
Thank you. Wherever I've worked, I've always had a boss to report to. At the moment, I have one Minister of State who's recently changed with the change of government from Liberal to Labour. I have worked for joint boards, for combined fire authorities, and in every occasion, the importance of having an open dialogue but a professional relationship. It's very tempting for such questions to say, well, the first thing we'll have is a scheme of delegation. Will you all write down specifically what I do and what the Commissioner does? But I don't think we need anything like that. I think what we need is a pretty clear understanding that if I would transgress into anything, even remotely political, I would be sharply rebuked immediately. And likewise, if you all, through the Commissioner, were starting to make decisions which I consider to be operational, I would hold my hand up and say so. We need to have that maturity of relationship. In terms of the reporting arrangement, of course, there will be a formal arrangement and a series of meetings in which we'll discuss progress against the targets which you all set for me. However, there'll also be routine, dialogue which takes place in the passing, and that's what I tend to find most of the business is done. As I'm sure most of you can see, I'm pretty open and easygoing. I don't take criticisms personally, unless they're personal. Generally, criticisms of a chief fire officer are professional criticisms, and we have to take them on the chin. That's part of the leadership role that we have in public service. So I think an open dialogue with the Commissioner, a series of agreed strategic objectives is a good basis. That way any concerns the Commissioner has will be directed against the achievement of what we've agreed. I think that would be really important as well. And I understand as well that as a panel you can call me up to give evidence and answer questions at any time, and I'm quite happy to subordinate myself to that process.
So do you see the role of the Council, as it stands at the moment, do you see that's important in communicating alongside the Commissioner?
If I'm appointed by you all, I will be engaging routinely with councillors, not solely through this method. It would be my life's habit to engage with elected officials across my patch, including our 7 MPs and including West and North Northamptonshire officers and officials. It's important for me to have a good stakeholder map, particularly as Northamptonshire would be a new command for me. And I'm going to have to get to know people quickly. And my ambition would be that you all would think that Northamptonshire Fire and Rescue was such a good outfit that you all wanted to be associated with it. And I won't be able to do that solely through this table.
Quickly. Right. Given the fact that there's North and West, and you're in charge of the fire service for the whole of the region, do you see that it's important that both areas get equal amounts of the right service?
The current service covers an area larger than France and Germany combined. I've got 14,000 firefighters, and no two urbanisations get the same level of service. That's a simple fact. In the outback, a fire can burn for a day before we get to it. So it would be silly of me to promise an equitable level of service to every citizen in Northamptonshire, because no public service can achieve that. What I can achieve is a minimum standard of service, and I will aim to strive to guarantee a minimum standard of service for everyone we serve and protect. And then we try and build upon that. And that's where resources meet our ambitions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lee.
Yeah, so far we've explored your relationship with the Police Fire and Crime Commissioner, with your employer, with the councillors. I'm talking about the organisational culture within Northamptonshire Fire and Rescue Service, engaging and empowering all staff members and the trade unions. In today's climate, where some people have lost trust in leaders who think they are above the law, if there is a dispute and the court makes a particular decision, would you respect that decision?
Can I just clarify? I'm being asked, you're giving me a hypothetical situation where...
Yes, it's about how you handle disputes with employees, just to make sure that you engage with all the employees working for you, that you can handle disputes and bring them to conclusion in a way that is fair.
Yeah, I believe strongly in the rights of employees. I've been a union member for many years of my service and an advocate for that. I also believe in the rights of employees who are not union members, incidentally. We have many of those too. Disputes are rare, and thankfully local disputes are quite rare. National disputes are uncommon. And if they're within my power to resolve, they're not difficult to resolve. Of course, that would involve often speaking with the Police and Crime Commissioner, because normally it's about resources. But generally speaking, I respect the right for people to be involved. I believe in engaging with employees, whether there's a dispute or not. That's part of our normal consultative process, that we ask our employees what they think about what we plan to do. Occasionally, there have been tensions, sometimes with my current group of employees. Some of the representatives believed they were being asked to give consultancy. And we had to explain, no, this is consultation. We're not asking you what to do. We're asking you what you think about what we intend to do. And they were really good with that explanation, and they understood what we were asking for at that point. But I think the important thing is dialogue. I don't believe in insincere consultation. I don't believe in asking people, for their views if we don't intend to take them. I'd rather be honest about that. But generally speaking, there's a legitimate and quite legally enshrined process in the UK. I've never subverted it. I would always work within it.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you. Welcome, Mark. What key principles will you seek to apply as the operational leader of Northamptonshire Fire and Rescue Service in order to build and maintain confidence and respect in your leadership and in the future direction of the organisation amongst staff members, partners and local residents?
The first key principle is public service and public safety. We're all servants of the public, and we exist to enhance their safety. Of paramount importance within that, of course, is the safety of our people. Those are the golden ones for me. But there's lots of times where we're not delivering acute services and we're not at risk. And we also have to remember that we are public servants in those times, delivering good value, delivering good outcomes for the taxpayers, whether they be emergency service ones or not. And being accountable. Those are important principles. Treating everyone we work with and everyone we encounter with dignity and respect. That's a natural one for most firefighters. That's a pretty natural one. They enjoy high popularity ratings. Even when we fail sometimes, we enjoy high popularity ratings, which is an odd thing for most professions. But the important thing for me is to protect that image. As a chief, I never really have seen the job as being much about me. I'm a custodian. All chiefs are custodians. So I believe that we hold it in our hands for some years and we pass it on to someone else in better shape. That's my ambition. So that's one of my guiding principles. I try and do the right thing. And I use the my mum rule. If my mum doesn't think it's good business, I wouldn't do it. She would think her sons would be honest men. And I'll try and operate in that way, with honesty. Sometimes you'll find as a fire chief that I will be strong and in defence of my service. You employ fire chiefs for their courage. Don't expect them not to have it. That would be my advice there.
Afternoon, Mark. You might have probably answered most of this in question 8, but what relationship do you think the Chief Fire Officer should have with the Police, Fire and Crime Panel, given the respective roles of the panel and the Police and Fire and Crime Commissioner?
I think I could say a wee bit more about that. I touched earlier on the panel's legal status. You can call upon senior officers to come along and answer your questions or take your challenges, and of course that's the formal part. But there's another habit I've had over the years where if you're on the Police, Fire and Crime panel and there's an issue of importance in my service on your patch, or which I think you have a particular interest in, perhaps as an independent member, then I would directly engage with you personally. Of course, I'd make the Commissioner aware of it, but I think you need to know what's happening on your patch. You don't really want to find out about it coming up the way. If I knew about it in my office, if I was you, I'd be disappointed that I hadn't come to you with it. So I'll try and engage more informally on matters of local interest to you. And hopefully that will make you be a more informed panel member on the issues of fire policy at least.
Thank you very much. And on that last topic, we have occasionally had briefings from the Chief Fire Officer to explain some of the background, and it's a bit of a training session as well. So I would hope that might be possible as well. But now we've finished our formal questions, and you'll be pleased to know. And I'd just like to ask whether you have any questions of the panel, and anything you'd like to bring up sort of extra to what you said already, or questions to the panel.
I was thinking you all would be imagining I've said enough already. It's wonderful to be interviewed in such august surroundings. I'd never imagined I would be interviewed in a place as wonderful as this. I asked a number of questions of the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner through the process of selection and before and after. So my questions are answered. I understand this process, and I thank you all for your time this afternoon.
Thank you very much. I think we've finished the sort of main topic there, obviously, of the confirmation. The next item, I think, was urgent items of business, but I presume, James, there's no urgent item of business?
That's correct, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So I think it remains to me now to ask the panel to support me to exclude the press and the public. I'm afraid that includes yourselves. Can I have a proposer for that, please? Yeah. Oh, okay, James is going to read the form.
Yes, so through you, Chair, the panel is asked to agree that under Section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following item of business on the grounds that if the public were present, it would be likely that exempt information under Part 1, Paragraph 1 of Schedule 12A to the Act would be disclosed to them.
I'm going to put it better myself. Okay, do I have a proposer? Okay, and seconder? Yeah, okay. Okay, all in favour? Okay. So, thank you very much for your time, and you leave these august surroundings.